Okay, so I want to discuss a report that's Fox News, and you know, I think it's important to discuss this. Um, I'm talking about a specific report, but I think it does highlight some wider issues. So basically, this report was about a Marine, a decorated Marine, Bronze Star recipient. He'd served in Iraq and Fallujah. Um, and he was having dinner at McDonald's in Washington, D.C. 10 p.m. He was accosted by a group of youths between, as he put it, around the ages of 18 to 21. And they basically assaulted him, took his wallet, his identification, his debit card, his credit card, and about $400 in cash. Um, Now, he believes that it was racially motivated because the youths asked him, does he support Black Lives Matter? That's as the reports go. I have to emphasize at this point, and I really do have to underscore this fact. Um, the reports at this stage don't describe the identity of the attackers other than being young. It doesn't say, what ethnicity they were. The attack took place in the Chinatown of DC, but um, during the Fox News report, and I'm not a fan of Fox News. I think they have a really right wing bias, and I think that they are far too sensationalist in the way they go about things. But this report was very calm and very measured, and the reporter, I forget who it was, I don't know if it was Brett Baer or someone else, said that this is not being covered by other mainstream channels or by mainstream channels. And I think he's probably right. It's not, and I think it's abhorrent. I mean, it's abhorrent that anyone would be attacked, but especially someone who has served their country. This man risked his life for his country, regardless of what you think of the Iraq War. That's what he done. Um, Unquestionably a brave man, but he reported this to the police, and he believes it was racially motivated on the grounds of that question. And um, according to his report, he ignored the question, just tried to get on with his dinner. Um, I hope they find these little thugs, whoever they were, and apprehend them as soon as possible, because it is an absolute disgrace. But I do want to raise attention of this part of the situation where they said, "Do you support Black Lives Matter?" Now, again, I want to emphasize that there's no details in the report about the background of the attackers. I have to really underscore that point. Nevertheless, the very fact that they would mention Black Lives Matter is significant in itself, because to me it indicates the repercussions that this movement is having. Now, I lost all respect for Black Lives Matter when they verbally harassed the very two politicians that were backing them, Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley, which to me was a total own goal. I just don't trust Black Lives Matter. They say they're a civil rights organization, but when you look a bit deeper into it, you start to see the very divisive agenda that this group has. And I have a few kind of open questions for them. Firstly, I should make a disclaimer, and I want to make a point as well. If you are African American and your immediate thought with this video is, what is this white boy talking about? If that is your outlook, that is part of the problem, because people who see the world through the prism of color are are basically going down a very divisive approach. There's no question about that. If your first thought is white guy speaking about Black Lives Matter, white guy is wrong. If that is your trail of thinking, then at least have the courtesy to listen to what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with me at the end, but at least have the courtesy to listen to what I'm saying. If you're going to make a comment, that is. If you think I'm full of shit, fine. Watch the video and go away, whatever. But I think there's legitimate issues here. Now, I understand how Black Lives Matter developed, and I absolutely agree that there are legitimate concerns for the African American community in America regarding the way the police interact with black suspects. I do think there's far too many examples of a shoot first, think later approach. I mean, the Eric Garner case was an absolute abomination. Eric Garner was committing a minor felony, he ended up dead. That's a disgrace. And I do think there's a serious problem in America with the power of the police, and it's taken these deaths to make some sort of changes. But I do think there's a legitimate problem with that. So I'm not in total opposition to all of the grievances that Black Lives Matter say they're about. I do think there's legitimate concerns. Having said that, I think whenever a movement starts to use counterproductive measures, whenever it starts to polarize people, all you're going to do is marginalize people. You're going to marginalize white people who might otherwise be sympathetic. You're going to marginalize maybe even some in the police who actually want reform. You will marginalize black people who don't like this sort of approach. And for the record, I know because I've seen the videos, I've seen many people talking about this. Not every African American supports Black Lives Matter any more than not every African American supported the Black Panthers in the 70s. So I think it's misleading for people to assume that this is a mainstream movement. Granted, it's had a big influence, but to suggest that it's has universal support among African Americans, I think is misleading. Um, I think it's fundamentally a pretty divisive organization with the way they go about things. But here's the thing: there are many issues that the African American community unquestionably faces. Now, my question is: if the issue here is about um, Black Americans, especially Black American males, dying young from violence, why does Black Lives Matter not pay attention to black on black crime? Why is there no focus on that? It's a massive problem in cities like Chicago, St. Louis. That's a fact. So why are they not going out of their way to deter young black men from joining gangs? Why is it always about the police? And I'm not one of these people that sort of thinks, oh, they're wearing a uniform so they walk on water and they're always right. That's not my line of thinking. But I do think it is wrong to blame the police for everything. And I do think that there is legitimate questions about what Black Lives' priorities are when they will have nationwide protests over a black man in custody being shot by the police, which is a problem. I'm not trivializing it, it's a serious issue. But why are they more outraged about that than, say, a young black girl shot in the crossfire between two gangs in the south side of Chicago? Why is that less of a? Why is there not the same sort of moral outrage from Black Lives Matter? Um, and there's been many examples of heinous crimes committed by black people that so-called black community leaders can't even bring themselves to condemn because it is always, always, always about racism. Now, does racism exist in America? It does. But I reject this philosophy that each and every single incident is racism. And I think there would be black sheriffs and black police officers who would rebuke that as well. I just don't accept that every single incident is about racism. And constantly portraying that as the situation isn't going to get you anywhere. It just isn't. I would believe Black Lives Matter is a legitimate organization if they were consistent, if they condemned black gang violence. They don't. And speaking quite frankly, not every black guy who's been killed by the police has been innocent. In many cases, they have a violent criminal record. It's a fact. Um, Now, clearly, the Eric Garner case galvanized people because that was clearly out of hand and it was clearly a disgrace what happened to that man. I was outraged at the time. But I think Black Lives Matter need to wake up and accept that they are not going to get their objectives if they continue along this approach of dividing people. They need to start taking more responsibility. Now, this incident that happened in Washington, D.C., I'm not going to throw out allegations and say, the people who attacked him were members of Black Lives Matter or whatever, because, I don't know. But clearly it's having a negative influence when completely innocent people minding their own business are being attacked. I mean, Black Lives Matter should start taking some responsibility instead of constantly brushing it off and trying to change the subject, which is what they do whenever these things are brought up. Because the thing is, all it's going to do is have a trigger effect with right wing reactionaries, like hard right wing reactionaries. Then they'll just come out with racist generalizations of the entire black community and say, oh, they're all criminals, and stuff like this. So as far as I'm concerned, Black Lives Matter needs to start taking responsibility, and I don't think they're doing that. As a political force, they have been galvanizing, they have been influential. There's no question about that, and I'm sure they'll have a very big role to play in the Democratic primaries. But serious presidential candidates need to be wary about how close they are to this organization. I'm thinking of Clinton and Sanders, because so far Black Lives Matter has shown that it is actually prepared to use some very divisive measures. I mean, blocking a terminal of an airport during holiday season, as we would say Christmas in the UK, is just going to polarize people. What does that achieve? It doesn't bring people onto your side. In the last video I made about this, someone said, we've been left with no other choice. I don't agree with that. I think, I mean, I do agree that without protest and just, muted criticism of police actions, I agree that won't get anywhere. But at the same time, I think that these sort of counterproductive measures, refusing to condemn the more obnoxious sort of behaviour from the movement and just pretending it's a minority of people when it's clearly not, refusing to condemn black gang violence, which is a serious problem in a lot of inner cities. Um, those issues to me demonstrates an inconsistency with this movement. If it's really about black lives, what about innocent African Americans caught up in gang violence when they're trying to raise a family, when they're trying to mind their own business, and they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time because selfish, sadistic gangs have decided to have a shootout and they've got caught in the crossfire. And that's not scaremongering. That happens. So I do wonder about the priorities. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. If you're aligned to Black Lives Matter, I would like you to address some of my points here. Why is it your organization completely ignores black gang violence, black on black violence? Why? Why is it always about the police? I've no issue with you raising that as a concern, but why is it always that issue? Why not condemn black gangs? So certainly I don't believe that this is a pacifist organization. And I do sometimes wonder if there is racist motivations behind it. I mean, for example, this Marine that was attacked, he was Hispanic. Now, again, I don't know what background the attackers were, but the fact that they would violently attack this brave man um, over whether or not he aligns himself to a political movement is disgusting, quite frankly. At the very least, Black Lives Matter should be condemning that. Their failure to do so will just demonstrate that they are a polarizing organization. You know, no one's saying that they are directly responsible for it, but if they don't start to take responsibility, that will be the accusation. And I don't think it will be the last such attack that we see. Um, so, by all means, campaign, condemn police brutality, but have some consistency. Condemn gang brutality as well. Where's the condemnation of that? Because frankly, there's many Americans living in fear because gangs plague their neighborhood in big cities. It's a disgrace.